Hi everybody, I'm Michael. This is a review for the Other Bennet Sister. So this is a Pride and Prejudice book written by Janice Hadlow. It focuses on Mary Bennet. So Mary Bennet, she's the third sister of the Bennet family, and she's the one that tends to get ignored the most. I don't think there are any real books about her. I seem to remember reading one, but it was so super weird I stopped within the first 15 pages. This book I read all the way through. I read it all the way through, and it's a pretty large book. Very large. It's 460 pages. And the first 150 pages are basically a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from Mary's point of view. And I thought it was super interesting. It's got a bunch of stuff which isn't in Pride and Prejudice. So, like, there's an adventure where Mary buys a fancy dress for the first time, or Mary gets glasses. And there's a lot of her talking with Charlotte. Charlotte's basically of the mindset that, hey, we're both kind of plain women. We don't really get a choice when it comes to romance or anything like that. We need to grab the first eligible bachelor we can get because, you know, they don't want to become spinsters. And that's basically Mary's tragedy, is that because she's the plain-looking one, everybody kind of hates her or ignores her, and nobody takes notice of her. Her mother really is mean to her. And Mr. Collins, Mary kind of tries... Oh yeah, there's a big sequence where Mary, you know, tries to win the approval of her father, and that ends in failure. I thought that was really sad, too. And Mary sort of has this, you know, tragic back and forth, trying to figure out, well, do I want to make a play for Mr. Collins, or should I not do that? You know, should I try to follow my heart, or should I be logical and accept no one else is going to look at me twice besides Mr. Collins? And her mom's like, no, yeah, her mom was really mean the whole time. Anyway, first 150 pages, I really liked it. It was basically just Pride and Prejudice up to the point where Mr. Collins proposes to Charlotte. So not too far beyond that is, that's the first 150 pages. Now, some people didn't like this at all. You know, reviewers seem to be of two different minds when it comes to stuff like this. So, you know, they don't want... Either they're going to really love a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from a different character's point of view, and that's interesting, or they're really gonna hate it and say, no, I want a new story. Why are you just repeating the same old story? So I happen to like just pretty much the entire book. The second part is just skips ahead like 2-3 years, where you know, Lizzie is married to Darcy. Bingleys are married. Mr. Bennet is now dead, and Mary's sort of, yeah, basically her father died, and Mary's sort of stuck in this weird situation. She's like, okay, well, do I live with the Bingleys? She tries that for a while, but Carolyn Bingley is so mean. I did see one complaint that Carolyn Bingley gets a lot of screen time in this book. She shows up an awful lot. She's sort of a rival for the two suitors. Yeah, Mary gets two suitors in like parts 3 and 4. It's pretty exciting. But Carolyn Bingley, you know, she's still sort of a one-sided character. She's just really mean. That's basically it. But she shows up a lot more than, say, Lizzie or Jane do. But she doesn't get as much development. It's strange. Anyway, so she lives with the Bingleys for a while. That doesn't work because Mom's there, and Mom's being terrible. And also Carolyn Bingley's there, and she's being terrible. She tries staying with the Darcys, but it's clear Mr. Darcy doesn't really like her, and it's just awkward. So she goes to live with the Collinses, which you'd think would be super awkward. And it kind of is, yeah. So she stays with the Collinses for a great period of time, and their marriage is kind of loveless. Charlotte's kind of mean. She's kind of just mean and just dismisses her husband the entire time, and he sort of grows close to Mary because they feel companionable. You know, they have the same interests. They both like books and serious study and philosophy. And Mary sort of feels a little bit regretful. It's like, oh, I maybe could have made it work with Mr. Collins because we have interests, unlike his wife Charlotte, who just openly hates him. But yeah, it sort of seems to have a happy resolution where she manages to, you know, not intentionally, she gets Charlotte jealous, and Charlotte starts paying more attention to her husband, and then Charlotte and Mr. Collins become a nice, happy couple again, and their marriage is more solid than ever, and Mary learns the lesson that happiness is what you make it. So then she goes on to part 3, where she moves in with the Gardners in London. I saw somebody say this is just like a rom-com, and it kind of is. It's the rom-com story of, you know, the ugly plain girl, but she moves to the big city, and she gets a makeover, and she gets all sorts of new outfits, and oh yeah. And the family just happens to have this hot guy named Tom Hayward who visits regularly, and he just happens to have the exact same love of literature as Mary, although he's more passionate, and he likes poetry. And yeah, he was interesting. I like Tom and Mary. They made for a good couple. But there's also Mr. Ryder, who is a very rich gentleman, but he's, let's say, impulsive. Impulsive is probably the right word, and he's really used to doing whatever comes to his mind, and he never has to suffer the consequences. And someone, I believe Mrs. Gardner is the one who says this is sort of like an extended metaphor for pregnancy. She mentions that in terms of pregnancy. Of a man, you know, getting a woman pregnant in the 1800s and then just abandoning her and the child and running away. And yeah, I mean, this goes on for quite some time, because you know, Mary has to judge the characters of the two men and figure out which one she likes, because she really likes his passion and his impulsiveness. And it's interesting, like, he thinks she makes him a better person by not being so impulsive. And that was an interesting thought. There are a lot of, I wouldn't say, like, huge amounts of interesting thoughts in this book, but there are definitely lines which gave you pause and made you think. As I said, the book is like 460 pages, which is just too long. There's actually one line in there about books which are just so huge. No matter how many pages you turn, you never seem to get any closer to the end. That's what Mr. Ryder says, but kind of showing how shallow and impulsive he is, right? But that totally applies to this book. This book does not need to be longer than Pride and Prejudice. Not so much longer. It probably could have lost, like, I'd say part 3 probably could have lost a lot of stuff. Probably part 1 as well. Part 2 is probably the shortest one, though. Part 4 is actually pretty short as well. So parts 1 and 3 probably could have lost some material. You could probably cut 100 pages out of the book, I think. And let's see, they go on this fancy vacation, and of course there's the love triangle drama, because, you know, Mary is getting very, very close to Mr. Hayward, and they're about to passionately declare their love for each other when the other guy shows up, and he thinks, oh no, Mary likes him better, and so he starts being distant and staying away from Mary, and she gets really mad. She's like, well, fine, if he's not going to talk to me, then I won't confess my love for him. And then he goes away, and she's like, oh no, why did he leave? He goes away for 2 months, and she doesn't see him, and every day is torture because she loves him. And her mom comes to visit, and that's when Mr. Ryder, the other gentleman, pretty much gets pressured into proposing to Mary, and he does propose to her, I think twice, maybe, like, he proposes to her, and then he has a little follow-up visit with her. And the first time is not really a proposal. He's actually asking her to become his mistress, and she doesn't really catch on until the end. But the second time is a proper marriage proposal, and she kind of turns him down both times, and her mother just gets really, really mad and leaves. And Mary's like, well, great, I just turned down this one guy because I'm in love with Mr. Thomas, but Thomas is gone, and I haven't seen him anywhere, and and then Carolyn Bingley shows up, and she does her mean girl routine, and she sends a mean message to Thomas, which inspires him to realize that, whoa, wait, Mary likes me more than I thought, and, you know, he comes and proposes. It's very sweet, and they get married, the end. Sorry, it's a long book. I feel like I've been talking a long time. Anyway, this was an okay Pride and Prejudice book. I feel like it was a bit too long, though. Definitely took me like over a week to read, and I don't think I was reading any other books, too, so it took a long time. But it's not bad for a Pride and Prejudice spin-off novel. I liked it. I'd probably give it like 4 stars out of 5. All right, those are my thoughts on the Other Bennet Sister. If you really like Pride and Prejudice stories and stuff like that, you might want to check out my video game, The Courting of Miss Bennet, a Pride and Prejudice tale. Right? You know, help me out here by buying my game. I get like a quarter of the price. So what is it? It's like $4. So I get $1 for every sale. So it's not a huge amount. But if you want to help me out that way, you could do that. If you want to help me out by subscribing, liking this video, or watching my other videos, that's another great way to help support me. So thank you very much. Bye.